Welcome to episode 15 of My True Ghost Stories. Today's story takes place after the conversation I told you about in the restaurant in episode 14. In that conversation, I realized that the ghosts around me were not scary, were not trying to scare me. And if you missed the story about that conversation where I lost my fear of ghosts, that's in episode 14 from last week. After that conversation, where I realized that the ghosts were not scary, I had a period of time where I was just acknowledging that they were there. And they were mostly in crowded places because they seemed to like to be around people. And during this period of time in my development as a medium, I would maybe nod to them or tentatively say hello and then move on. So I never had any conversations with them. And this was a big step, getting used to just acknowledging them and not being scared of them. And they were everywhere, and I saw all of them. I hadn't learned yet to set boundaries, and there are many ways to set boundaries, and I'll talk about that in a future episode. But I could see all of them, and I could tell that the vast majority of them were not happy. And they seemed to be trying to get my attention. And I was guessing that maybe they needed help, but I had no idea of what kind of help they needed and what they wanted from me. So I spent some time in this phase just getting used to them being there. And it was a necessary phase to get over my fear and to get used to nodding to them, acknowledging their presence. But one day, this help that I thought I was supposed to give, or this calling that I seemed to have, was spelled out for me as plain as day. Well, almost as plain as day. It took some figuring out. So I was a regular volunteer at this one particular church. It was not my church, but it was a church at which I spent a lot of time at events and doing some volunteer work. And it's the same church where I met the spirit of Steve's grandfather from episode 2. And this church had a lot of events, and during these events, the lobby, the front entrance to the church was closed, and the events would all use the side door. So there was this lobby, and it was very dark, and there was people and activity on the other side of these glass closed doors. But the lobby itself was dark because the front door to the church was closed, and the lights were always off. But the bathrooms were in this dark lobby on either side of the entrance. So when entering or exiting the bathrooms, I always ran. For years, I would run through this dark lobby, in and out of the bathroom. And the reason was that for years, there was a woman spirit sitting there yelling at me. Now, maybe she was yelling at everyone. It was more to everyone. Maybe she was yelling to everyone, but definitely to me as I ran through. But I never paused to hear. But I knew that she was sitting in this chair that was at the bottom of the steps that led up to the sanctuary. And she was saying, "Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me." And she would be saying this as I literally ran through the lobby. I didn't care how I looked or who saw me running. I just ran. And nobody ever asked me why I was running. And I had been doing that for years. So even after my coffee date with Victoria, where I lost my fear of ghosts for the most part, I was still scared of this one. Now, part of the reason for this, I believe, is because the lobby was dark, and it would be considered a spooky setting for anybody. And also, this ghost was yelling, and she was always there. But since I was getting used to them, and I saw that they can't hurt me, and it didn't seem that they want to hurt me, and they didn't even want to scare me, and I was getting this feeling that I was supposed to help them, and this spirit was sending out a very strong message that she needed my attention, and there was a desperation to it. So because of all these reasons that I just listed, I did lots of thinking. I consulted with my guides. I consulted with spiritual people. And I decided that for the first time, after a lifetime of fear, I was going to actually talk to this spirit. And it was going to be the first time I ever did that. So after this decision that I made to talk to this spirit, there was another event at the church very soon thereafter, and I went there and I said, all right, I'm going in there. I'm going in that lobby. So I went up the little stairs, through the glass doors. I let the glass doors close behind me, and I stopped in the lobby. It was dark, and it was quiet, and there was activity through the glass doors, and there was the chair at the bottom of the stairs, and the stairs led up to the sanctuary. So I walked to the middle of the lobby, and I stood in front of the chair, but not too close. And I could feel her intense energy, but this time I wasn't running. I was just standing there, and I could hear her words in my mind. Excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. And for the first time in my life, in a very low tone, partially to counteract her panic and mine, and also so that the people on the other side of the glass doors couldn't hear me talking, I said in a very low tone and very timidly, "What do you want?" And she responded, "I need help. Please help me. I need help. Please help me." And I responded, I can't help you. I don't know how. I don't know what you need. And it went back and forth. I need help. I need help. You have to help me. And me saying, I don't know what you want. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help you. And it kept going back and forth. And then finally I said insistently, I can't help you. And at that point, the men's room door, which was on the other side of the stairway from the chair where she was sitting, the door to this men's room opened slightly on its own. There was no wind, there was no window, there was nobody in there. It opened slightly on its own and then slammed shut. And then it slammed shut over and over and over again. Bam, 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 bam. At which point, I ran. I got out of there because I knew that nothing was causing this door slamming except for the fury of this spirit, because I was unable to help her. And I ran out of there and I was like, so much for talking to them. I'm never doing that again. That was a mistake. And I vowed right then and there, I am never talking to a ghost again. It is too scary. So it was a few days later, and I was sitting alone in a waiting room nowhere near this church, and I was waiting for my daughter to come out of an appointment, and I was sitting in this chair, and it all came to me. An explanation of what that scene was with that spirit. And this is what I realized to be true. The chair that she was sitting in, always for years, was a stair lift chair. And a stair lift chair is a motorized chair that moves along a rail to help people get up and down the stairs. And this chair was at the bottom of the stairs that led up to the sanctuary. And she wanted me to help her. And she was waiting in that chair. And she wanted to go up like someone who would need that chair. She couldn't go up on her own. And that chair went upwards into the sanctuary, a holy place, a place where you might find God. So to me, the message was plain. She needed help to go up to God. And she seemed to think that I could do it. And she was very angry when I said I couldn't. She was so angry that she made the door slam over and over again. So sitting there in this waiting room of the doctor's office, I silently discussed with my guides, what should I do now that I've figured out what she wants? And they said, go back to the church lobby. So I went back to the church lobby. A few days later, I went back, said hello to a few people at the event, summoned up all my courage, and headed back to that dark lobby. I stood in front of the chair at the bottom of the stairs and said, in the bravest voice I could muster up, I said, okay, I'm ready to help. And the spirit of the woman stood up in front of me, still near the stairs. And my guide was there, and he said, help her go up. Help her. And I realized that she could see me, but she couldn't see my guide. And I stood there. I had told the spirit that I am ready to help, and I still didn't know what to do. And my guide's directions changed to send her up. And I knew it was more than a matter of just turning on the chair. I don't think the chair actually had to do with it. I think it's what the chair represented was having assistance going up into a holy place. The explanation of how I sent her up will be another episode because it's very hard to explain. It needs a lot of explanation. But after the guide said, send her up, I sort of got an instinctual feeling, and I focused on this woman spirit standing in front of me, and I made an energy pathway upwards in my mind. And it was around her, and she went up through it. And I felt her leave, and the lobby was suddenly peaceful. And I could tell that she was no longer there. And I felt so serene and accomplished that I couldn't wait to do something like that again. A week or so later, I was in the same doctor's office waiting room that I had the revelation in a week or two before. And the presence of the woman's spirit came to me there in the doctor's office. And I could hear her voice, and she was saying, I forgot my shoes. I left my shoes, which I figured represented some sort of unfinished business because, there was no shoes laying around. So I consulted my guide, and he said, tell her it's fine. And her name is Edna, and she's outside. So I walked over to the door of this basement doctor's office, and I opened the door, and there was a bird sitting there on the ground. Not injured, just sitting there. And it looked like he was waiting for me. And we looked at each other, me and this bird. And I said, reassuringly but firmly, I said to the bird, Edna, it's fine. And the bird flew off. So that was all many years ago. And I still do volunteer work at that church, and the lobby there has remained peaceful, and no spirit sits in that chair, at least not yet. And if they do, I will know what to do. This experience, I believe, was an introduction to me by the powers that be that need me to do this work. And it was like a beginner level, plain, obvious message with a situation that spelled out what I'm supposed to do and how I can help. And the message or the assignment by the universe was talk to them and send them up. And it was punctuated with scary movie style door slamming just to let me know it was real. And it also explained why spirits are always trying to get my attention. Somehow they have always known that I can help them. So in the years since, I have continued to build on this sending technique. And I've learned to set boundaries, and I've learned to protect myself from negative energy. And the most wonderful thing is that I get to enjoy that accomplished, serene feeling that comes from helping, from being of service, all the time, every time I do this work. So I'm going to make a habit of listing the episodes that I've promised to record while recording the current episode. And the ones that I have said that I would do in this episode are an episode about setting boundaries and another one about how I send these spirits up. So again, I will use this as a little to-do list for myself, and feel free to remind me in the comments if I forget to do one of these episodes. But give me a little time. And if you've enjoyed this episode, it would be so great if you could take a second to review it and share it with a friend to help this show grow. And that's all for today. Thank you for listening to today's episode. And if you think your house is haunted, want energy cleared from your space, or need a custom spiritual ritual, I'm here to help. Visit jpclearing.com or email me at jpclearing60@gmail.com. Don't forget to join me here every Tuesday for a new episode. Until next time.